Oh yes, the final Tuesday night crit of the season in 2019. I'm on the racing team called PAC, and we'd like to thank our sponsors that help make our racing possible here in Richardson, Texas, just north of Dallas. This is again the Tuesday night crit on about a 1 mile ovalish track around a city park, at a city park, and here we are for the final race of the season. So I have my overlays on, and I have a new overlay. That's David Irwin giving us the thumbs up from the rear there. David was on the podium in one of the Cat 1-2 races at Tulsa Tough, which was a great result. And he is the series leader as far as the individual with the most points in this crit series. Over from, I guess, March till tonight, the end of August, as the sun keeps going lower and lower every day and we don't have light to continue the series. So let's take a quick look at our overlays here, because I have a very special overlay today. And that is on the right side. That is showing a metric where we're going to look at the breakaway and the main pack and the difference in speed and the amount of time between the breakaway and main pack. That is not going to be in play here at the beginning of the video because there will be groups up the road, small groups, attempting a breakaway, but that is not the main breakaway. That will be the focus of the ride later. So I guess I could have taken away that overlay for the first part of the race and then just added it in when the data actually applied, but I was too lazy to do that, so I just laid it in the whole way. So right now, this don't pay attention to that right now because it's not pertinent right now. Anyway, of course, here we have power on the left bottom, and we have MPA, which is an exert metric, which indicates what I have in reserve. So if I'm at like 1360, that means I'm at full power in terms of what I have in terms of energy in the tank. However, if I go below that, that means I've gone above threshold and I am starting to dip into my reserves, and I may be in trouble in terms of being able to respond very sharply as I get more tired and as that number goes down. So we'll talk about that later. Of course, in the upper left, I have meters to go to the finish, so that gives us an idea of where we are on the course in terms of distance left, and of course in the final lap that can be especially pertinent as to say 500 meters to go, 200 meters to go, and so forth. So just to give you a little background in this race, I have one teammate in this race, John Summers, and he's really done great in this series. Look on the right here. Did you see that? Right through the grass. Right through the grass to make an attack on the group, and that's John Ryan. He's been really successful. He's one of the Matrix riders on their elite team, and he's won several of these crits. So a very dangerous rider to get away. And it's not my preference to go through the grass. Whenever I've been in the grass, it's because I've been pushed into the grass. Not on this A race, but on the C race last year. Yeah, that happened to me a couple of times, where I thought somehow I could move up from like 50th place to first place on the final lap, which was not going to happen. So anyway, here we can see that there's an acceleration, and that typically happens at the beginning of these crits. Lots of attempts to establish breakaways, and often the beginning is very difficult. So I'm a Cat 3 racer, which means I'm at the very lowest category of those that are allowed to be in this race. So here's Ryan Chrissy in front of me, and he has just done the B race right before this. So there are a few guys that are Cat 3s that just did the B race and are now entering in the A race. And in my experience, that makes it really tough, because even if you don't go super hard in the B race or you sat in or whatever, if you put in a final sprint or something, you just don't have quite the energy to have this, fast pace. We're going 31 miles an hour here. If Ryan was fresh and he hadn't done the B race, he wouldn't have just, I think, fallen off the back. But I've certainly had that happen to me many times, where I did the B race, then the A race, and I've fallen off quite quickly in the A race because it's harder to do both in a row. Anyway, I have not done this particular crit for quite a while. I want to say maybe like 2 months or 6 weeks or something like that. And this season, I had been doing the B and the A, whereas last season, towards the end, I did a number of these races where I just did the A. Today, I didn't know what I was going to do because it's the last of the entire year. There is a team points challenge, and we were not in contention for first place, but we were in contention for third place against Windsor. The gentleman right in front of me here, Brent, in the blue and purple, black and purple, blue, black, and purple. Anyway, they are in third place, and we're only like 4 points behind them. And maybe if I got points in the B race, it'd be easier for me to get points in the B race. I might possibly even be favored to get points in the B race. But the B race is worth less points. And anyway, I decided that at the very last second that I would just do the A race so that I might have legs to better participate in the A race rather than sacrificing my chances to play on this playground, so to speak, in the A race. Not that I had any expectations to really do anything in this race, because there is a very strong, powerful field here. And, you know, if they had a little race predictor thing for this race, it is a USA cycling sanctioned race. Although I don't, I signed up at the last second. I can't refer to an actual race predictor for this, but I would not be in the front. So on the left side, again, another attack through the grass. So, just not a huge fan of that myself. Being a middle-aged guy that just wants to survive for another day. That's all I care about. So this turned out to be, I think, a really interesting race from my perspective. Really, it was fun and very interesting, so I think there's going to be a lot to talk about. I'm going to probably make another version of this commentary where I'm going to have a guest commentator and we're going to talk together. But he is not available for some time to be able to do that. So rather than wait a long time, I'm just doing the solo commentary now, and we'll probably post this up again with the guest commentary where we discuss back and forth what was going on and what we were both thinking during this race. So you can see that it's a little bit fast and furious here in terms of going and people chasing. Being the old man that I am, it's really hard to remember exactly what was happening in terms of who was off the front and so forth. My teammate on this ride, John Summers, and I'll point him out when you can see him, but because he's close to the front and I am near the back, and that's typically the case, I can't point him out to you yet, but I'll point him out. And his strength is getting into breakaways. So he really always wants to be in the breakaway, and he will often try to initiate a breakaway or otherwise join a breakaway. So that plays into how I'm considering and thinking about this race. So I'm thinking, John can be in the breakaway, or at least try to be in the breakaway. Of course, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But I can just sit in, and I will try to put my sprint powers to use, meager as they are, but maybe that's my best chance to do something. So here I can actually see John. He's on the right side. He's poking through a couple riders there. So in the red, yellow, and black, about 3 riders up on the right side. That's John. So he's my one teammate in this race. So you can see when the pace goes up, what goes up must come down. And when you're at the limit, often other people are at the limit too. You can see that there's a group of 3 off the front of us there as we go through this chicane. The wind was different than usual on this particular day. So it's August, summer in Texas. Usually the wind is from the south. Today, however, the wind was from the northeast and it wasn't particularly strong. So I can't remember ever doing this race where the wind was from the northeast. So light winds usually portends a greater possibility of a sprint finish. That doesn't mean there's going to be a sprint finish, but it means there's a chance. Strong winds, it's almost always a breakaway that wins. So this course is not very technical. The turns are not very technical. We do have these dips. They look bad, they look dangerous, but when you actually do them and you're used to them, they're not bad at all. The grip on this road, the concrete is great. You have great grip. Sometimes people in these turns through the dips, you'll see them lose their rear wheel a little bit, but it's pretty rare for people to go down. I can't remember the last time I saw somebody go down just because of a turn. Um, there's one of the dips right here, and these dips are used to get water off the soccer fields that are in the middle of this oval. So, in general, not a good idea to be at the back for many reasons. But usually one is in the back for a reason, because one is lacking the fitness to be near the front. But today I decided I was going to be patient, and I had no particular aspirations for anything, and I would just follow, just follow, stay with the main group, and see what happens. So you can see there, being near the back, gap opened up. That's not ideal. This is John, my teammate right here. So he's going to cover this gap, and I'm going to try to stay on his wheel here. And again, this is the part where we'd have a little bit of a tailwind today instead of a usual crosswind. So different from the normal racing that we do here. So what else is the context of this ride? Yeah, we got second place in the B race right before this. So that was how many points? I think that's 3 points. So that means that if we do really well in this A race, there's a chance that we get third place in the team competition. So you can see a breakaway up there, up the road, 3 riders again, and I can't remember off the top of my head who those riders were. I'll have to take another look at that. So I'm watching this race for the first time, so I haven't seen it before, although, of course I lived it, but especially I didn't know what was going on behind me relative to looking at the video of what's going on behind me. Of course, I was just mainly paying attention to what was going on in front of me. Typically, on a normal day, we'd be completely guttered in this section. Today, it's actually a little bit of a headwind. So instead of the normal crosswind, where the wind is sweeping from the left to the right, we have a little bit of a headwind. So that's going to play into, just when you get into the wind, when you can move up, and that sort of thing. So there goes John. John, whenever the group slows down, he's going to move up, and whenever he has the opportunity, he's going to make an attack and try to bridge up to a breakaway or form a breakaway. So, sometimes when you have these breakaways up ahead, depending on who's in the breakaway, it's going to determine what the group wants to do. So maybe the group wants to let those guys hang out there. If it's the guys that you think can stay away, then there's going to be a concerted effort to bring them back, or potentially the group just giving up and letting them go because they feel like it's pointless to be able to try and bring them back. So I wish I could remember exactly who it is. So I can see that it's a Matrix rider, a Dallas Racing rider up there. So we'll see when it comes into play here. This will get more interesting to talk about when the fun stuff actually starts happening. So you can see the gap there is being closed. I believe that's Bicycles Plus on the front of our group here that is doing work at the front to close this gap. And we got some really strong riders in this race, and I can't go through and name all of them, but here's Joseph Fidel on our left, really strong, promising young rider that I don't know what cat he is, but he started the season as like cat 4, cat 5, and now he's been on the podium in the A race. He's definitely a cat 3. He might be a cat 2 now. I don't know if he's catted up to 2. Anyway, I assume next year he's going to be a cat 1, so that's pretty exciting to see these young guys that are getting into racing and doing quite well. You can see he's bandaged up because he crashed last week, and the McKinney crits went down arguably a pedal strike. He doesn't recall apparently that he struck his pedal, but on the video it looks like he struck a pedal and he went down, but hardcore. Doesn't matter if he's wrapped in bandages, he's out there racing. So Bicycle Plus rider there, Sean, that had been on the front pulling, now drifting towards the back and going to get back on. So he's done some work. He has a teammate in the ride as well, Borowski. And again, this is the nature of the ride. You see guys going off the front and a chase, and even though I'm just sitting in, there are a lot of times that I have to respond to these accelerations if I'm going to stay in the group. You can see there's a pretty big gap behind me right now. But of course, and also one important thing: if you can, don't break, don't lose your momentum. Move up when you can, when things have slowed down. Try to be in a good position, because you don't want to be in the position of getting gapped and spit off the back. So the guys behind, they're right back on. They didn't panic. The guys right behind me, two guys right behind me, Matrix. Joe Emmons is now moving up. He was behind me. Now he's going up the left-hand side there. He is in second place in the overall points individual competition. And the Matrix team in this red, blue, and white, they are the first place team in the team competition, and they've guaranteed themselves the win already. And then Dallas Racing in the yellow and black, not to be mistaken with the red, yellow, and black of John, my teammate right in front of me, but just the yellow and black. They're in second place in the competition and not at risk to fall to third. So no real drama right now in the team points competition for first and second, but a little bit of drama with us for third place between my team and Windsor in the purple and black. And of course, just the drama of who's going to do what and win on the final crit of the season for the Tuesday night crit. The Fair Park crit down near downtown Dallas wrapped up this week as well, while the McKinney crit up in McKinney, Texas, on the north side, is going to continue, I think, for a couple more weeks. So, beautiful day with the sun going down. The sun going down is also the reason why we are not continuing the crit past this week. So I think it's kind of we have such a wealth of opportunities of crit racing here in the Dallas area. We have the Fort Worth crit, so that's 4 different crits basically firing off every week from about March through. So there is no shortage of the ability to race. If you're a Cat 4, Cat 5, Cat 3, get some points and so forth. Really go against some top-notch guys, and usually pretty safe and fun. So we're still not to the decisive breakaway, but we'll get to that in a bit. I'm just looking off the front here to see if there's anyone off the front, and I didn't notice anyone. So again, I think we're good to maybe the group's all together at this point. And this year I think I may have raced a little bit less than last year. I went on vacation for 3 weeks, like 2 weeks in July, 1 week in the beginning of August, and I did do a lot of riding the first 2 weeks of that vacation. Some of it was mountain riding, so it wasn't super intense or anything, and I'm no good as a mountain bike rider, but it was fun, and probably better than not being on the bike at all. Again, I'm not very good at turns, even though it isn't a technical turn, letting gaps open. I don't want to be doing that over and over. So, some guys really are motivated and they race all the time, and some of us are not as motivated, and I don't know, once we hit some kind of mark or moment, or we've proven to ourselves what we want to prove, or we've accomplished what we want to accomplish, we start to maybe dial it back a little bit. So there's John. You can see him in front of me. He's looking back. I assume that's because he wants to know where I am relative to the group. Of course, he might be looking at who knows what he's looking at. But in other words, I don't want to presume that he's looking for me, but I'm thinking he's probably looking for me. And again, I'm not sure exactly what he has in his mind. You can see an attack going up the right side here. But it's a huge advantage to have a teammate in a race, and it also makes it a lot more fun. So potentially we can play off of each other, where one of us does one thing and the other one benefits. So for example, if John's in the breakaway, I have no responsibility to chase the breakaway, and no one expects me to be on the front or do any work, and I can just sit in. However, if we're not in the breakaway, we may have some responsibility to chase, although we're one of the smaller teams in the field today. So our lack of representation may put more obligation on us. However, if the teams are represented, then in the breakaway, then maybe it's our job. So that's not going to be a lot of fun to have just the one-off guys, the unaffiliated guys not on the team all working together to chase. That usually doesn't work out very well. So yeah, you can see that there's a couple of guys off the front there, and we're now about 20 and a half minutes into the race. So looking down at my MPA 1341, that means I'm still sitting fairly pretty in terms of energy conservation. I'm not now into the red so far. When that number dips, like if it goes below 1,000, I'm in trouble. That means I'm really suffering. If I'm at 600, it means I can barely respond to anything. Hitting the absolute bleeding out of my eyes kind of situation. Even 1,100 means significant fatigue. So again, we see that there is this mad dash that's always happening in the crit, or at least this one. The A crit is a lot more fun than the C crit and the B crit because there are more tactics at play. So if you're kind of new to racing like me, you will find as you progress over time that moving up has its advantages and fun. So we see an attack there. That looked like it was Joseph, the young racer I was talking about. Boom, he's off the front. And so, yeah. So that's an important moment. I think he's bridging up to somebody, but it's, the resolution of the video is less than the resolution of the human eye. So things that I can see in person, I cannot necessarily see here in the video as I'm recapping and replaying what was going on here. So somehow I've found myself near the front, despite all my pledges to do no work and be on the back. I don't really want to do any work. So you can see this rider in front of me from Dallas Bike Works doesn't want to do any work either. So then we see Raul and Borowski go off the front. So Joseph was actually by himself. Those two riders fire off, and they're going up to join Joseph. So this was actually a very important moment because we're going to be chasing these guys for a while. Raul is someone that does the pop ride, regular on the pop ride, so I've ride with him all the time. He's on Dallas Racing, which is the yellow, blue, and black. The rider right in front of me here to the left, he is a member of Dallas Racing. So, good question. Is he trying to join the breakaway? Is he trying to bridge the group to his teammate? Not exactly sure what the strategy is there. But typically speaking, if you have a teammate in the breakaway, you would be relying on other teams to do the work to cover this. So you can see there's a pretty good gap here, and they are off the front. And me and this Dallas Bike Works guy, we've been at the front, near the front. I haven't been on the front for quite a while now, and nobody has done any work to try to bring this breakaway back, other guys in front of me. So even then, the guy in front of me on Dallas Racing may be trying to slow down the group by keeping it at a reasonable pace, i.e. blocking, not physically impeding people on the road, but by inducing the group to ride slower. So the heavy hitters are not up the road. No offense to Borowski, Raul, and Joseph. But there are guys that are stronger, more experienced, and that would be favored to win this race that are still in the group behind me, and they are not doing any work. So here we see an attack on the right-hand side. Windsor not represented in the breakaway. Pack, my team, not represented in the breakaway. You see a Matrix rider right behind John, my teammate, as those three go up the road chasing after this breakaway. So the breakaway, even though it might not be the strongest in terms of the riders compared to the favorites in the field, has a big enough gap that there is the sense that perhaps they are actually going to get away, And as the as the brain cells start firing away with the riders in the field, they start thinking, is this actually going to be successful? Should I do something? And more people are firing off the front, saying this is important. We need to mark this. We need to get away. So we see the two riders there up on that just passed me. Those are the two leaders of the individual points competition, and they are two of the favorites to win this race. So them going is a sign that this is an important moment, and all the favorites don't want to be left behind when the favorites are moving to the front. So we're going through this turn pretty fast, so 30 miles an hour through that turn. My dog is behind me panting, and let me go shut the door. Sorry about this. This is one of the hazards of YouTube commentating at home. You never know what's going to pop through the door and interrupt your very important YouTube video of your amateur cycling race in your career. So that's the finish line, of course. And these guys are riding hard. Let's see what's happened. So we saw that Windsor Brent had fired off trying to get to the breakaway. He's back with me now, so he was not successful. And let's see who else has joined. Nick had fired off the front. He's back together with us. We see Jeffrey May. I think that's Jeffrey May here on my left on the Cannondale, the yellow. He would be also one of the favorites to win this race. Really strong, powerful rider that if you were watching Tulsa Tough and one of the crits, he spent a lot of time off the front in the Cat 1-2, one of the Cat 1-2 races. Got a lot of airtime. Didn't end up winning it, but he helped set up his teammate. His teammate in the race, who's David Irwin, who was on the podium in that particular crit. So that was kind of fun to see guys that you know on the televised feed that are racing. Last year, the final crit, it poured rain in the A race, and that was interesting. Vegan Cyclist was actually in that race. And I was pretty excited to be in the same race as Vegan Cyclist, but I'm terrible at corners, so you can imagine how terrible I was in the middle of a rainstorm, even though this course doesn't have corners. So it was not the greatest experience or performance on my part. I think I have a video of that somewhere. Anyway, so this breakaway is still up the road, and the bridging efforts have failed, to the credit. So my teammate John, he had tried to go up to the breakaway. He's still there with the group here. So you can see the breakaway. They're still pretty far up the road. If you look to the far left of the screen, you can just barely see them as blips. They just went by. So we're probably talking about a 20-second gap here. And here I am on the very back, second to last, almost the caboose, just trying to conserve my energy and wait for the sprint. And when you're good at one thing, you think you want to do the one thing you think you're good at over and over, but is that really the best strategy? And more to the point, is that the most fun thing to do? Should one change it up? Some people ask, am I a sprinter? Am I a breakaway specialist? What kind of racer am I? And at this level of like Cat 2, Cat 3, so you can see John's arm go up. His arm goes up and he's pointing forward. So the only person he could be trying to communicate with is me, I think. So there you see his arm go up and he's pointing forward. So I'm thinking, what the heck is he saying that I should be further up in the group? Is he saying that I should do something? So here I am rolling up just to talk to him, see what he has in mind. So here he is talking to me, and he says, attack, go up the road, try to get, and I'm like, what do you mean attack? You mean try to bridge up to the breakaway? Kind of like he's kidding or something. And he goes, yeah, you need to bridge up and try to get to the breakaway. So here I am pondering this message. It's sort of like, the 10 Commandments came down from the mountain, and it's like, thou shalt not covet or something, and you're like, what the heck does covet mean? And my brain is not entirely figuring, why does he want me to try to bridge up to the breakaway? I've made a breakaway once in an A race last year, and it was kind of a unique circumstance. It was a lot of fun. So John is moving up. He's the breakaway guy. I'm expecting that he should be in the breakaway. And so I'm thinking, maybe I should try to do this. But let me think about the right moment to do this. And so right now we have a tailwind. It's hard to pass through the chicane. And I'm thinking, gosh, when we go around this corner and into this northeast wind, I really don't want to try to bridge up in a headwind. But, who knows? So John's going to the front again. And so I am just quietly considering and thinking his advice to go to the front and try to get up to the breakaway. So, a lot of those guys just failed trying to get to the breakaway. Does it really make sense for me to try to do it, especially when this might come down to a final sprint? And I'm a bit more of a sprint specialist than, say, like an FTP, TT kind of guy. So here it slows down again for a moment. Right behind me is Jesus, aka Chewy, aka Jesus. You may know him from previous races where I described him as Jesus, but I think it's actually Jesus, and his teammates actually call him Chewy. So I guess for the purpose of this ride, I will call him Chewy. So why am I talking about Chewy? Well, boom, I noticed, whoa, Chewy's going by me. John told me to try to get on the front and try to bridge up to this breakaway. John, luckily, is on the front of the group when Chewy goes, and I'm on his wheel, so in effect, John is kind of blocking because, he's not chasing after me, and Chewy's putting in a big effort. He did it at the end of the headwind part. We're now going through a little bit of a crosswind, although it doesn't really factor in because the wind's pretty light. Chewy looks back, sees that I'm there. He's starting to let up a little bit. I decide that it's my turn to go to the front. And there's also a decision here, should I work together with him? Should I attack him and try to get up to the breakaway by myself? Do I risk him bridging up to the breakaway here, where he attacks me and leaves me behind? All these thoughts are going through my mind. And as I get closer and closer here, I'm kind of hoping he'll pull through and do the rest of the work here. I think at one point I looked back and I didn't really want to put in the effort to cover this. So you can see my MPA has now dipped, and I had to put in a significant effort to make it here. But gosh, I'm like, wow, I'm here. We made it. I did what John said. Wow, I'm in the breakaway. So we have Joseph here to my left, right in front of me. We have Raul in the black and yellow. And we have Borowski on the front on the Bicycles Plus team. And we have Chewy with Windsor behind me. So we have 5 teams represented in this breakaway. That's good news for us, because that means just maybe the guys behind won't chase. So actually now the breakaway metric information on the right side comes into play. I am the white arrow, and the green arrow is the breakaway. So right now we have an 18-second gap, and I want to thank Sam Findlater for doing the work to provide this graphic. He's developed the technology, so to speak, to do this. He's done it through Dashware, but there's calculations of some sort that are beyond the comprehension of normal human beings to create this graphic. And I told him I thought it would be useful for this particular video because, dang it, I'm in the breakaway. And I want to see what's happening behind me in terms of the gap, because often in the race I didn't know what the gap was. So we only have an 11-second gap here, so it's not huge. These guys are behind us and they're chasing. And it's sort of like game theory, a breakaway. How well are we going to work together versus are we going to work against each other? So we're going to have to try to stay together and work together if we are going to be successful. Because if we start messing around, it's a guarantee that the guys behind us are going to catch us and finish us off. So this is my first pull since catching the breakaway. I think it is anyway. And I've had an opportunity to recover a little bit. and I need to be metering out my power where we're going fast enough that we can increase or keep our gap, but at the same time not put myself in the position where I'm doing too much work for too long and at risk for being attacked by the guys in the breakaway, because that certainly happened to me in the past where I've been dropped from the breakaway, and that's the last thing you want to have happen is getting dropped from the breakaway, especially if it has a chance of being the winning breakaway, and especially if your team is relying on you to make it in the breakaway. So it's not like I have a lot of teammates that are sitting back there saying, oh, he's in the breakaway. I only have one teammate that's back there. And so it's not like, we have 5 guys that could go to the front and drill and try to bring this back. We only have one guy. So there's not a whole lot of pressure on me, but certainly it'd be a disappointment if I got dropped from the breakaway. So what kind of breakaway is this? Well, as I was thinking about the analogy here, we're a little bit like the Wanty breakaway. This is not to insult the guys that are with me, but because we are not the elite guys in this race, we are like the Want of the Tour de France, like, that little team from France that is not particularly good, but they're always getting in the breakaway, and then it's like the elite guys and the elite teams let them be in the breakaway because they know they're not a threat, but they are a useful tool for just having a presence of a breakaway. Thus, the favorites can stay in the back and control things, and they can potentially reel us in when they want to reel us in. So we are now 20 seconds in terms of our lead in the breakaway, and seems like we're working pretty well. This is in my mind at this point that we're working pretty well. The pace is not super high. It's not super hard. I'm comfortable in this pace. My MPA is 1298, so it is not, and it's rising actually. That means because I'm going below FTP in the draft here. And boy, that'd be an ideal situation for me to be in a winning breakaway where I'm not particularly taxed either, and we're all doing approximately equal work. That would be great. That would be a dream come true. That would be a miracle. Breakaway of 5 if it's successful. If I can out-sprint a couple of guys, I'm on the podium, which would be, I've never been on an A-crit podium. The best place I've ever gotten in this race is 5th. And I think one of those times was a super small field, and another time it was sort of a similar situation. And so it wasn't like it was all that incredible or, like an achievement of any sort. That was last year, so I was 5th a couple of times. Flick of the elbow, and it's my turn to go to the front, so I'm looking what kind of power I'm doing. 314 watts. So this is near FTP for me. And heart rate 153. My heart rate does not go very high. I think it's genetic, or I've maybe have been up to 175, say once in the past 5 years. So my heart rate does not go particularly high. Our gap now is 15 seconds, so it's fallen a little bit compared to the gap previous here on the prior lap. Somehow I ended up doing my pull into the headwind, and Borowski looks back and says something to me. I can't remember what he said. And actually, I don't think I understood what he said in real time. Just with all the wind noise and everything going on, it's hard to hear what people are saying. Not requiring a lot of work for me in the back here, Well, I was going sub 200 watts, but of course it just depends. In my experience, you also really need to be careful in these breakaways about crossing wheels. People crash in breakaways, so I think they get tired, they get a little bit lazy and lackadaisical, and with winds, they will cross wheels a little bit for wind advantage that they might not otherwise do. So you need to be careful. And you can see that when we make turns, guys look over to see if, the gap, how big the gap is, and so forth, so that we can judge how far we are. And this was a big problem for me because I had a really hard time seeing what the gap was. And 24 seconds now, we're extending our gap. This is a pretty solid gap. So I was wondering why Joseph was opening this gap. He's a strong rider. It doesn't make any sense to open up this gap. and I didn't feel particularly prone to close the gap for him. I suppose, uh, the situation would be if I have to close that gap, I'm going to try to drop him. Um, you can see Borowski here, I guess, didn't really trust what was going on with Joseph and goes through that gap, and I get onto Borowski's wheel. So one theory here is that Joseph is struggling with his recent injuries and crash, and he's just not quite as strong and feeling as good as normal. So all evidence points to that explanation rather than him dorking around, because, again, he's opening up gaps for reasons that are not to his advantage. So I missed pull in terms of all that gap happening, and rather than just sit back and not take a pull or take a pull later, I just front and take a pull because it's to my advantage at this point for this breakaway to succeed. And if we start screwing around and skipping pulls, again, it's not likely that the break will succeed. So you have this, you have to think about metering your efforts. Again, you can see that there's a gap in the breakaway here where Joseph has allowed a gap to open. So one wonders if the guys behind are thinking about this, and you can see there's been a rider chasing. Boom. Okay. Someone's joined us in the breakaway. Someone's covered that gap, even though the gap is 30 seconds. And that is Andrew Armstrong of Matrix right in front of me here. So advantage to Matrix. They now have 2 riders in the breakaway compared to everyone else with just 1 rider per team in the breakaway. You can see Chewy behind me on my wheel. So, at this point, with someone joining us and me not knowing what the gap is, I'm thinking the gap can't be very big and this does not bode well for us succeeding. So I don't know that any of us in the breakaway really expect to succeed, but at this point, we have all put our chips into the breakaway and we all want it to succeed, or at least I think all of us want it to succeed. That may change in a little bit. We'll see. See how fast we do this turn. So 25 miles an hour through that turn. Certainly not the fastest one can go through that turn. We're trying to keep the pace up. I think the average speed for this race, I forget, 27.5 miles an hour, somewhere in that range. So, for my standards, pretty fast. Maybe not for your standards, but I'm an old man. I'm a Cat 3. What can I say? That's pretty fast for me. You can see guys looking over. They want to see how big the gap is. Every time I looked over, I couldn't see crap. I've got these dark shades on. It's dark outside. I don't have contacts in, so it's a little bit blurry. That is not conducive to good racing when you don't know what the gap is. At a certain point, and it might have been around here, one of my teammates who had raced the B race yells at us that it's 30 seconds. I'm thinking, wow, that's bigger than I thought. That feels good. You're like, okay, let's keep working. It motivates you. You're thinking, this could be successful. So this is the guy that bridged up to us, Andrew. He's taking a pull. Now I'm on the front again going about FTP-ish in terms of the amount of watts that I'm putting out. So definitely not hammering as hard as I can, but metering my efforts to try not to get too tired. And actually, as I'm doing this, I'm not actually looking at my power meter very much. Just kind of doing it by feel. Doesn't look to be too tough for the guys behind me by any stretch of the imagination if I'm just going 300 watts. Here's Chewy to the front on the right side. And as the race went on, it seemed like Chewy was the most motivated out of all the guys to make this succeed. So here we see, important moment, that Armstrong behind me does not pull through, but yells at me to skip him, and he's sitting on the back. And now we have a situation where guys in the breakaway are not cooperating and putting in equal work. So he's sitting on us for reasons unknown. So what are the reasons he might sit on us? One reason is he can't do work because he's too tired, and if he does work, he fears he will get dropped from the breakaway. Another reason could be that He doesn't want the breakaway to succeed. And so he's hoping that the group will catch us, and he doesn't want to contribute to any work. Third possibility is that he's going to conserve as much energy as he can and try to win because he has a teammate in the break. He may not feel responsibility to do any work, and he feels like, well, maybe I can win if I don't do any work, and I'll hedge my bets. And if maybe the group catches us, well, maybe my teammate will win, so win-win for my team. That doesn't really bode well for us, so that takes away some of the motivation and morale of the breakaway to have guys sitting on. So what would be the usual tactic if I was that guy sitting on the back and there were strong guys in the breakaway with me? They would attack me. They'd put in an attack and try to drop me. So the question is, are we going to do that, and who is going to do that? So let's see what happens here. So Fadil in front of me with the bandages, me pulling through. So at a certain point here, Chewie is yelling at us that we need to go harder and faster. So it must have been here, because instead of doing 305 watts on the front, going a little harder. I was going 350 watts and so forth here. The gap is down to 17 seconds, 16 seconds, so the gap is falling. And as Chewie says, the only way we're going to win is if we work really hard together and we go faster. So just cruising around is not going to win it for us. They were letting us cruise around. They could have come up to us. They could have chased us down, but because of the good team representation, you can see that they were just happy to have us dangling in front like the wanty breakaway. So you can see that Chewie again is motivated. He just starts hammering on the front. He is marked by the Matrix Rider, and then I am marking the Matrix Rider. So this is where you can really see a breakaway stop working together, because you're like, gosh, if I go to the front and do a hard pull, someone might attack immediately after, and that will screw me. I'll get dropped. You can see Chewie looking back. He's perfectly happy to drop these guys that are in the back, and he's not particularly motivated to say stay together and have us work. Big gap opening up here with the Matrix in front of me, and really it's do or die in terms of staying together with Chewie or not. I have to put in an effort here. My MPA has rapidly dipped as I've gone above my FTP. I'm now at below 1130 watts in terms of my FTP. So as a gauge of how much energy I have left, I've significantly gone into some deficit, but I'm not cooked. I'm not cooked. I'm just a little bit tired. I'm tired, but I'm not cooked. So the guys behind are able to catch back on, and now you can see a situation where it's the four of us, and we've actually dropped the Matrix Riders. They are behind. So even though they had the advantages in numbers, they are now significantly off the back. And I'm not sure I actually realized that until now as I'm watching the footage. So let's see if they catch back on. Borowski has gone to the front, and you can see again who's the motivated guy that's putting in the watts and the effort. Chewie. He's going hard. He is a breakaway specialist, so he's not going to, excuse me Chewie, I don't mean to offend you, but he's not going to win the sprint finish in terms of being in the pack and the group. He waves his elbow, says it's my turn, and I'm going to the front. So instead of doing 305 watts now, I'm over 400 watts briefly, and I'm going harder than I was before, putting in significant effort to stay on the front. So going 27 miles per hour, and let's see what our gap is. We've opened up the gap quite a bit now by our hard efforts, and we are now at 30 seconds. So gosh, we're on lap 21 of 24, and we have a 29-second gap. This is looking really good for us. Couldn't be more pleased, and it's just four of us. All I have to do is beat one person, and I'm on the podium. Do you know how amazing that would be? There is even a theoretic chance if this stays away, if we stay away, I might be able to win first place. It is not out of the question. So going from, possibly being dropped and, mid-pack last place to like having a chance to actually win? Are you freaking kidding me? Impossible. I am now in, a situation that is beyond reason for me. But it's still a long ways to go. And all the strong guys are behind us. All the strong guys are behind us. And that means there's still, strong chance that we could be caught. And we are now sort of in this desperation kind of mode. So you can see right now that the Matrix guys have not caught on. It is just still the four of us. Although, it looks like that's probably Joseph with the orange helmet there. He's trying really hard to, but really hard to cover this gap when we're going hard. And if you weren't strong enough to stay in the group, it's really hard to bridge back up to the group. That's very unlikely. So nice draft I'm getting here into this headwind, not having to put out a lot of watts to stay on Chewy's wheel for the moment. Now kind of going into a little bit of a crosswind, and it's my turn on the front again. And we're motivated to work together. Borowski's saying, like, go hard, go fast. Of course, everyone wants us to go hard and fast. Why am I not going harder? 300 watts, so I'm not going as hard as last time. I think partly because I'm a lot more tired. I'm now below 1200 watts in terms of my MPA. My heart rate's almost 160. Doesn't sound like a lot to you, but for me that's pretty high. I'm significantly in the red, considering it's almost impossible for me to get to 170. So I'm working pretty hard, even though my watts aren't super high. What is the gap doing? The gap is now down to 24 seconds. We're in lap 22, which means we have 2.5 laps left before the finish. Wow, look at that. Joseph back on. So I guess during my pull, I wasn't even paying attention to what was going on behind me, he was able to get back on. And it was my recollection that there was a Matrix rider with us. The question is, are the Matrix guys behind looking at what's going on, saw Joseph and Andrew fall off the back, and maybe judging their chances of Joseph winning based on how he's been operating in terms of this breakaway? So here I am, fourth wheel, and we're going through the turns here. So normally this would be a tailwind in a normal day, this part of the finish, but today it's a little bit of a cross headwind, and as we're going here it's a little bit of a headwind and so forth, but again the wind is not very strong. 21 seconds, so the gap is going down, and so we're down to 2 laps left. Chewy on the front again, going into the headwind. This guy is a machine. This guy's motivated, and he put in a big effort in the B race right before this race. So it's really impressive that he's in the breakaway today, right now, when he was also working really hard in the B race. So he was able to recover at the beginning of the A race, and then with enough recovery, he was actually able to bridge up to the breakaway with me. So good for us. My turn on the front again, and let's see what I do in terms of power now. We're going 25 miles an hour, but the gap is falling, 18 seconds. And again, 290 watts. I'm not super impressed with my effort here. 312 watts, MPA 1219. Again, if you put in everything, you're going to get dropped. So maybe someone yelled at me, or maybe I felt a little more, so the watts went up for a moment. The gap is falling, 14 seconds, 13 seconds. They are motoring behind us. So I don't know what's going on. I have no idea what the gap is. And as I make this turn, my watts are falling, and hoping that somebody will pull through here so that I can get off the front. Gap is now down to 11 seconds. So I didn't know where these guys were. I was told afterwards that there was a significant chase going on with many of the strongest riders chasing us, which does seem to be the case. So we're at 8 seconds, 7 seconds in terms of the gap. I can't really see anyone behind us in the video, but they are getting awfully close to us in terms of catching us. So here we are about to make this left-hand turn again with just over 1 lap left in the race. So it is do or die. It is desperation for the breakaway to be able to stay. So you know those plucky guys that are not favored, any of us, to win this race. We're the underdog breakaway. Will the guys behind be chasing their own teammates to try and go for the win? Yes, they will be. They are chasing, and the guys that are chasing, they are the ones that have teammates in the breakaway. So the guys that did most of the chasing were Matrix and Dallas Racing that are chasing after us. So you can see Borowski has let a gap open up behind me. That doesn't really bode well in terms of his finishing strength. But boom, he let a gap open, but here he is to the front and accelerating the group. So I'm not exactly sure why gap opened up there. Boy, they're right behind us now. They are just, according to our metric here, a couple of seconds behind us. That is not far at all. And I have no idea at this moment what's going on. And I'm thinking, I'm like pinching myself. I'm like, we're going into the last lap, and I am in perfect position, and I need to focus on my sprint to try to outsprint these guys for the podium or the win. And Borowski had put in a hard effort there. Oh no, oh no, oh no. And it's like, uh-oh, they've caught us, not good. And so here I am, like, okay, I'm having to put in a significant effort here. I had no idea they were catching us till the moment they passed us. And I'm watching this footage for the first time now. So I'm not sheltered here. Big effort on the front. Two guys off the front. Windsor, Brent passes me. Big guy. Sorry, Brent. I always call you a big guy. But the point is, big draft behind him, and he's an excellent sprinter. He is a sprinter. So excellent wheel for me to be on. And need to stay on this wheel if at all possible. Now, you can look at my MPA. It is now quite low. 900, 800. In the 800s, I'm significantly tired going through this turn at 30 miles an hour. And I'm in his draft. I should be better in his draft than right there. So now I'm actually in his draft. We just have this left-hand turn to go. And I'm thinking, gosh, just need to pass him to be third place on the podium, going as hard as I can. You look at my MPA. I'm very close to my MPA. And gosh, here I go. All I need to do is pass him. All I need to do, boom, everything. I didn't have anything. Didn't have anything more. Being in the breakaway, getting onto Brent's wheel, making that acceleration as the breakaway was passed, couldn't get by him. I don't know if I'd been able to get by him if I was fresh or not, but obviously if I was fresher, I think I'd have done potentially a little bit better. My teammate behind me, John, the breakaway specialist, there in the sprint, was able to get fifth, pass a few riders that were on my wheel, and I got fourth place. So this is my highest finish in the A race, so better than my fifth last year, and I think I earned this fourth. It felt like I earned this fourth, even though perhaps I got a little bit lucky in some ways, being in the sort of the wanty breakaway, so to speak. I did part of the work to get in the breakaway, but the tactics played out such that the fast guys were willing to let us dangle in front, and of course they timed it such that they could catch us. So we were the sacrificial lambs to prevent a more serious breakaway if I have to analyze the situation. But the key moment in terms of my finish was when we got past and me being able to quickly accelerate there. So pretty pleased actually with getting fourth place. Now the problem was Brent got third and he's on Windsor, and we needed to best them in points. If I had beat Brent, so I lost him by about a bike's length. If I had beat Brent, we would have been third place team on the podium for the season-long team competition. Just that close. We didn't make it. But it was a really fun race. I'm glad John told me to try to bridge up. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't have tried. And it made it a better learning experience and a more fun experience, and one that I'll think about later. And trust me, that night I was thinking about, afterwards, I was thinking about what happened and how close I was to being on the podium, how close I was to potentially having a chance to win. Now, as it was, the chance, now that I've looked at the video, and this is the first time I've looked at the video, I doubt that breakaway was ever going to win, because the guys had it timed. Now, there were guys who sacrificed themselves to make that catch. So the argument is, should those teams have allowed their teams to go ahead and, win, so to speak, and not chase them? So I think if Matrix and Dallas Racing had not put in efforts to chase us down, we would have stayed away. So, if you're their teammate in the breakaway, are you super thrilled that they chased you down? Well, maybe not. On the other hand, that's just the life of being a domestique, I guess. is that the alpha guys determine what happens, and perhaps to some degree they did not like their chances, or rather, you know, they just considered us to be the, tool, just the pawn in the race. So the perfect scenario for me would have been that the big teams, the powerful teams, the number one and number two team had let us go. That would have been the ideal situation for me, that they'd say, oh, we've got a guy in the breakaway. Let's let them go. We're in the top 5. Maybe we can be on the podium. The individual racing series championship is not at stake. The team championship's not at stake. Let's just, let them do their thing. So, but on the other hand, it worked out as it worked out, and it was a lot of fun. And this is what crit racing is about. It's about having fun and being safe and just sending it and getting the result that you can. I did set an exert breakthrough for this ride, although my exert signature was a little bit stale. So, it's one of those stale breakthroughs, like it had fallen. I hadn't really done hard efforts in a while, but still it was fun. It was a big effort in terms of the amount of watts that I had to put in there at the end. So you can see that the watts I put out was higher than what the MPA said I could do, which means that my signature was quote-unquote broken and had to be reset to account for this. So excellent time. I hope to put together another version of this video where me and Chewy duke it out, discuss what happened and what we should have done. Perhaps if I'd known what was going on behind me, I would have done an all-out last lap effort instead of just sitting in for the sprint, so to speak, on the last lap. So our cooperation broke down. But I don't think it mattered either way. We would have not have succeeded in terms of, if we'd gone a little bit harder, I don't think we would have succeeded. But anyway, good times. If you like this video, please consider subscribing, liking, etc., because that helps the channel and all that crap. So thanks for another great year of crit racing in the Dallas area. Thanks to my local friends and cyclists who watch these videos and comment. It means a lot to me when you say you enjoy the videos, even if the analysis is not all that great. But anyway, talk to you guys later. Bye-bye.